Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so have you ever used an app that just felt right? Or, on the flip side, one that literally made you want to chuck your phone across the room, like a digital door that says pull when you actually need to push? Well, you've just experienced the invisible architecture of digital products. Today, we're going to completely demystify exactly how modern applications are built. We're going to break down the highly structured, psychological, and visual processes that dictate every single tap, swipe, and click.
Here's our blueprint for today. We'll cover UX versus UI, the core rules of good design, the 5-step UX process, research and mapping, and finally, the ideation tools used to actually build the product. Let's dive in.
Section 1. UX versus UI explained. Strategy versus execution.
To really grasp digital design, we've got to completely untangle UX from UI. People constantly lump them together, right? But they are totally distinct problem-solving phases. So here's the deal. UX, user experience, is all about the analytical strategy. It is the underlying logic, the information architecture, and the mapping of the user's journey to make sure it's super usable and friction-free. UI, or user interface on the other hand, is the execution. It takes that raw, invisible architecture and translates it into a tangible, visual hierarchy you can actually see. We're talking aesthetics, those cool little micro-interactions, and full-blown design systems.
A really brilliant way to think about this is by using a simple house analogy. Just think of UX as the floor plan and the plumbing. You don't necessarily see the plumbing, but man, if it's bad, the house is completely unlivable. UI, though, is the interior design, the gorgeous hardwood floors, the paint, the perfect lighting. If the UI is bad, sure, the house works, but it just feels unwelcoming. For a product to truly succeed, honestly, you need both of these to be absolutely flawless.
And what's fascinating here is how your UI choices completely change the way that underlying UX plumbing gets presented. Like, take a command line interface. Super high speed, but yeah, it's got a massive learning curve. Then we have our standard graphical user interfaces with those intuitive icons we all use today. But then look at voice user interfaces, or NLP, which is natural language processing. NLP completely shifts the cognitive load. Instead of you having to learn the system literally has to learn what you mean. It's a wildly different architectural challenge.
Moving on to Section 2, Core Rules of Good Design, the Foundation.
These rules basically act as the non-negotiable laws that govern any well-designed system. Before we even think about making things pretty, a product literally must work for everyone. Accessibility, often written out as A11Y, is not just some optional enhancement. It is a hardcore design requirement. This means sticking strictly to visual contrast ratios so things are legible, building in proper screen reader support, and ensuring every single element can be navigated using only a keyboard. Bottom line, if it's not accessible, it's not good design.
Then, we have the rule of simplicity, which is perfectly captured by Hick's law. This law basically states that the time it takes for a user to make a decision goes up with every single additional choice you give them. It makes sense, right? To combat that kind of analysis paralysis, designers use this brilliant strategy called progressive disclosure. They basically hide all those complex secondary options until the exact second the user actually needs them.
Okay, Section 3. The 5-step UX process, from concept to draft.
Now that we've laid our foundation, let's explore the actual framework teams use to build this house. And a quick heads up, this isn't just a straight line, it's honestly more of an infinite loop. It kicks off with understand, really learning about the user and challenging our own assumptions. Then we define the core problem to sort of make sense of the mess. Next up is brainstorming to explore a massive quantity of ideas. From there, we prototype to build a functional draft, and finally, we test it as a reality check. And funnily enough, that test usually sends us right back to square one to refine things even more.
Let's actually apply this to a real scenario. Imagine we're designing an app for booking Himalayan treks. If we skip that crucial understand phase, we'd probably just assume users want a cheap price and slap a big Book Now button on the screen. But if we follow our UX process, we'd uncover that users are actually terrified of altitude sickness. That changes everything about our architecture. Now we know we have to design an interface that visually communicates safety, highlights daily oxygen levels, and really focuses on preparation to ease that anxiety.
Which brings us to Section 4, Research and User Mapping. Data meets empathy. To uncover those hidden emotional drivers, like that fear of altitude sickness, we have to transition into rigorous data gathering. UX research basically splits into two camps: qualitative interviews to find out the why, and quantitative surveys to find the what. Look, if one user complains in an interview about hidden permit fees, well, that's just an anecdote. But when a quantitative survey reveals that a staggering 82% of travelers abandon their checkout specifically because of hidden fees, yeah, that instantly goes from an anecdote to a massive, data-backed architectural problem that we've got to fix right away.
So, how do we keep all that data organized? We synthesize it into user personas. These are heavily data-driven, fictional characters that we build straight from real interview transcripts and surveys. They capture demographics, primary goals, and really critical pain points. Think of a persona as a proxy for the target audience. They're figuratively sitting in the room with the development team, which is super important because it stops designers and engineers from just building things based on their own personal preferences.
Next, we take that persona and we map out their emotional journey over time. We literally visualize all the exact touchpoints, from discovery to research to booking and all the way to post-trip. The really crucial part here is tracking their emotional highs and lows. Like if we see a specific drop in excitement and a huge spike in frustration right at the booking phase, maybe when they hit those hidden fees we just talked about, well then we know precisely where we need to tear out the plumbing and fix the experience.
All right, on to our final stretch, Section 5, Ideation and Design Tools, Building the House.
With the problem clearly mapped out, we can finally move to construction. But wait, instead of jumping straight into complex design software and getting bogged down by pixel-perfect details, designers actually start on paper. They use rapid brainstorming techniques that focus heavily on divergent thinking. So they'll use how might we questions to reframe pain points into opportunities. Or they'll do crazy eights, where a designer sketches 8 completely different variations of a screen in exactly 8 minutes. It's basically a cardio workout for designers. And because it's just on paper, there is zero emotional attachment, so the team can test out different layouts at lightning speed.
Once those structural wireframes are sketched out, we establish the interior design using a mood board. This dictates the entire emotional atmosphere before a single real screen is even rendered. For our trekking app, for example, we might pick some clean, Apple-style sans serif typography just to evoke a sense of trust. We'd add a color palette featuring Himalayan sunset orange, maybe some sophisticated UI textures like background blurs, and expansive drone photography. All of this is strategically chosen to make our anxious user feel inspired, but more importantly, safe.
To actually bring all these mood boards to life in the final software stack, modern product teams rely on some really heavy-duty UI tools. Right now, Figma is absolutely the undisputed industry standard. It's browser-based, which allows for real-time multiplayer collaboration. Think Google Docs, but for design, and it makes handing things off to developers incredibly smooth. Meanwhile, Sketch is still a super powerful Mac-native pioneer. It's highly favored for its offline capabilities and its ability to handle massively complex files, especially in really strict privacy environments.
And that brings us to the end of our structural blueprint. Ultimately, the true hallmark of this entire rigorous process, from the deep psychological research all the way down to the precise code in Figma, is that genuinely good design feels completely invisible. You achieve your goal without ever consciously thinking about the interface itself. So, I want to leave you with this question. The next time you effortlessly use your favorite app, what invisible architecture is secretly guiding your every click? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the structure behind the screen.